In this video, we will demo the process for collecting product information when a buyer is interested in purchasing a product. Here is a prompt that captures the buyer's product brief, creates an RFQ ticket, and notifies the sourcing team. I click the prompt and ask it to generate the architecture. This is the generated architecture. It first asks the buyer to explain their product brief. After we connect the form, it collects product details, specs, quantity, and other information. Then it creates a ticket with the product specs and calls an external API to create the ticket. Then it notifies the sourcing team with the RFQ details and ticket number. Then it generates a response telling the buyer if there was an issue creating the ticket. Or it confirms to the buyer that their RFQ has been submitted for the next step. This is a typical use case. After we approve it, it generates the workflow. This is the generated workflow. When it starts, it welcomes the buyer and asks them to enter product information. We can increase the model. It asks the buyer to fill in each field we need. Then it calls the API. We use a fake endpoint here, and it saves the response as a ticket number in the ticket number session variable. We also save the ticket URL here.
Done.
If ticket creation fails, it marks the request as failed. If it succeeds, we send an email to the support team with the ticket number, URL, and corresponding email content. Then we send a response back to the buyer, letting them know that a ticket has been created. We can save this here. Because we are using demo data, ticket creation will fail, but we can still test the flow. Here, I have already created an identity to simulate the buyer. You can use AI to test the flow. We can replace this base prompt. This is the base prompt for the buyer. Now, let's start testing. It goes to the AI conversation flow and asks the buyer for input. It starts by providing a form for the buyer to fill out. The AI automatically submits the form content. Then the AI gets a response and calls the API. However, because we are using a fake API endpoint, the request fails. Then it lets the buyer know that it failed. You can see that it did not tell the buyer that ticket creation failed. The issue is that the model here is too weak and did not follow the prompt. We need to increase the model and also change the prompt. The model should know that there was an error. It should ask the buyer to try again, if needed. This fixes the issue. Then we can save again and test again. Now it correctly tells the buyer that there is an issue. It asks the buyer to try again. You can continue. After testing, you can see all past conversations here. We have the logs, previous conversation history, and transition logic for each node. You can easily debug and understand why it flowed to a particular node. Yes, click to see the next node. Then we continue. If you want to use this in production, you can publish the workflow. Then add this workflow here. Let's give it a name. It depends on your use case. You can describe when to trigger this. For this demonstration, we trigger it when the conversation starts. For example, I can say, "Hi, I want to buy products in Asia." It will trigger the corresponding workflow. We can see that it gets triggered when you use it in a flow. You can define whatever conditions you need. You can combine different workflows in a single chatbot and use the corresponding conditions to trigger each workflow. Or you can trigger the workflow when the conversation starts, or even trigger it for every conversation.